You all set? Okay. Call the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order on May 22nd, 2019. And we have a need for non-public.
I believe that you do, for hiring purposes.
Okay, that's RSA 91-A3 2B, purpose of hiring. Okay, next is approval of minutes. May 1st. Do you have any issues?
I do. On page 13, the last sentence, it says there will be a meeting on May, I think it was 23rd at the RIB site. I think that's that one. And on page 17, the first motion, and the RSA is RSA 91-A:3 2 B and C. B and E, excuse me. No, is it a C? Let me check the front. E. It's B and E. Those are my only two.
Somebody make a motion with the amendments?
Move to approve as amended.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay, May 7th. Pretty short.
Doesn't say much.
Want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The reason being Linda read did the minutes. Okay, May 15th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearings.
Here we go.
First one is the Back Bay Water Skiers, Abenaki Water Ski Club, to hold a water ski tournament on June 22nd to 31st, 2019, July 20th to 21st, 2019, August 17th to 28th, 2019, September 7th to 18th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to sunset in Back Bay behind the railroad station. Somebody's up there. Bill's already up there.
I'm already up here. Bill Swatfield for the Abenaki Water Ski Club. Our incorporated name, by the way, is Back Bay Water Skiers, Inc., but we go by Abenaki Water Ski Club. Yes, this is actually our 39th year in Back Bay with tournaments. I can't believe it's been that long. But yeah, the 31st New Hampshire Open is on June 22nd. The 39th Lakes Region Open on July 20th, and it may extend over into the morning of the 21st. And then we have the New Hampshire Championships on the 28th of August, excuse me, the 17th of August. That's the 28th annual. And finally, the New England Slalom Championships on September 7th. The first three tournaments are the three traditional skiing events: slalom, tricks, and jumping. Usually we run slalom in the morning into early afternoon, then either tricks or jumping right after that, depending on the weather. So it's all amateur competition, and we have skiers from throughout New England and even beyond every year. And some of our skiers are routinely qualifying and medaling at the national championships. So we are very appreciative of being able to use the site behind the railroad station for our starting dock and our finishing area. And there's great viewing along the Bridge Falls path. Obviously, that's free to the public, and we would like anyone who would like to come to view the skiing. Also, we're practicing out there daily as well, and we have people watching that as well. So we are here again.
Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board?
Would you like a motion?
No.
I move to approve the temporary event permit for the Back Bay Water Skiers, also known as Abenaki Water Ski Club, to hold water ski tournaments on June 22nd, 2019, July 20th and 21st, 2019, August 17th, 2019, September 7th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to sunset in Back Bay behind the railroad station.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next public hearing is the NIC to hold a family event fundraiser for the NIC at 80 Academy Drive, Wolffield, on Saturday, July 13th, 2019, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Hi, Holly Williams O'Coin representing the NIC. This will be our 14th annual NIC Fest event. Excuse me, it's a fundraiser for the NIC. And we usually see between 600 and 800 people come to our event, which is great, as long as the weather cooperates. So we'd like to do it again this year. I think this is our 4th year at Brewster. We moved it from the NIC to Brewster just because we get more foot traffic and make a little bit more money that way. So that's nice for the people attending, although we'd love to have it at the park, obviously. There's not really any big changes this year to the event other than the fact that we're adding a touch-a-truck area. We're going to have a couple, maybe 4 or 5 vehicles. Police department is participating. They're kind enough to bring a vehicle and a cop, which my son will very much enjoy looking at the trucks and going through them. So thanks, Dean, for that. We've got a couple other participating vehicles. I think the town's considering bringing one of their dump trucks, and we've got some other places in town, but each truck that comes or car will have the $1 million policy that will be given to Brewster, so it'll be all insured. Other than that, I don't think there's any major differences from the past 13 years, so would love to be considered.
Anybody have any questions? Huh? Any questions from the public? You want to close the public hearing? Somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve a temporary event permit for the NIC to hold a family event fundraiser for the NIC at 80 Academy Drive, the DeWolf Field, on Saturday, July 13th, 2019, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you there.
Yeah, probably will. Okay, the next one is the Children's Center to hold Fairyland in Cape Park and Town Park on Saturday, July 6th, 2019, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Hi, my name is Nancy Lentz, and I'm here with June Connors, and we represent the board from the Children's Center, and we're asking permission. It's our 9th year, and we do it to thank the town, the children of the town and the surrounding towns, and just need a permit for all our little fairies and magicians.
Yeah, some of them are pretty, did pretty well.
Yes, yes, they
Some
do.
people spend a lot of time.
It was very successful
time.
last year. Worked out well.
Yeah, good weather always helps.
It sure does.
Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, close the public hearing. All right, I'll make a motion to approve a temporary event permit for the Children's Center to hold Fairyland, Hayden Town Park on Saturday, July 6th, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Linda, you abstaining?
No, I'm off the board.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll see you there with kids and grandkids.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Mine will be his. Thanks. Okay, the next one we have is Harriman Hill Post 18 to hold,
Hale. Supposed to be.
says Hill. Okay. Harriman Hale Post, number 18, to hold an Independence Day Parade on Thursday, July 4th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Thank you. My name is Harold Chamberlain. I am, once again, the commander for the American Legion Post 18. And just for the knowing of it, the theme this year will be community, state, and nation. Those are the 3 things that the American Legion works for. And this is our 100th anniversary for the American Legion is also 100 years since the parade was first held. So we got 2 centennials going on here.
Oh.
And there was some discussion I needed to make with the chief, and he requested the last time I was here that we do it at this meeting. Situation is, a lot of you remember Stan Stevens, when we used to line the parade up down at Clark Road, both 2nd, 3rd, and all that. And then we marched all the way up, went around Old Lakeview Terrace, all the way back again. And it seems though the traffic was backed up down the Portsmouth traffic circle, and the state of New Hampshire didn't like that. So they had a meeting with the chief and the Board of Selectmen. I believe Paul Hatt was the chairman at the time. And they directed that if we wanted to continue our Independence Day parade, we had to hold them where we have been up there. And I have developed kind of a quandary by my success, because the parade is quite likely 3 times bigger than when I first started with in 95. And the problem we're having is the folks that used to be former police officers that knew how to direct traffic, I'm putting flags on their graves. They're gone. And
Not all of them.
yeah.
Not all of them.
Well, the ones that used to do what I do,
I'm still here.
yeah, ones that used to do what I do, they're gone. And so what I need is some official police work, because we have people who are going down Old Lakeview Terrace the wrong direction. And whereas we were directed by the town to do it this way, therefore, strictly speaking, that is the way the streets are that day. And I do have signs that I place all along the parade route, no parking this side and one way only, but people still go the wrong way. I think that some of them do it to be hateful. Some of them because they're bloody Republicans, I don't know. I'm a Republican being, but so. And anyhow, so if we could get a couple of police officers, one of my hotspots is Old Lakeview Terrace where it meets Main Street, in Forest Road where Old Lakeview Terrace is there, because I got some people, because of the length of the parade, I've had to line up on Forest Road, keep them off the street, but that's got to be 2-way traffic down there. And some people are not good at sharing the road. So if I could have some police officers of people who can have the power of arrest when these situation comes up, which I certainly can't do, all I can do is get on my cell phone and they'll get down there when they can, and I don't expect the officers to tell people where to line up. I'm just asking them to direct traffic as needed and give us some help there. It would be a big help on this very big parade. And another thing I wanted to bring to your attention, sir, is the parade. We have some people with big entries. We want a spectacular parade. And last year I had to put them up on Main Street, make sure they didn't park in front of fire hydrants. And I've never had to put them way up beyond where the Wright museums have been lining up. And it'd be kind of nice if we could have a police kind of go by there every now and then, make sure everybody's happy and the 2-way traffic can keep going while we're lining the parade up. And
He's the gentleman to talk to.
yeah, well, he told me to say it here, so
Well, that's fine, but we
I can
can't,
follow simple instructions. Sergeants do that to colonels, you know.
well, they're under the police commission. We can't tell them what. I think he got a pretty good idea of what you want.
Yeah.
So he can probably take that back to the commission and get it straightened out. Right?
And I'd be glad to come to any meeting you wanted. So,
We'll be, Chief Rondo, Pro PD, we'll be happy to work with Harold and what he needs, and just let the Board of Selectmen know. I'm bringing in some additional resources in the CERT team members, so we should have plenty of help on hand. But over the last few years, I will testify to what Harold is saying. Over the last few years, about the last 3 to 5, it really is an 18 to 22-hour day for us between and I'm not complaining, I'm just stating that we have all hands on deck. and the entire police department. And it's about 18 to 22 hours between the parade and then and there's a little break in there, and then we all come back in for the operations briefing for the fireworks. And then of course we got to police up all the barriers and everything else afterwards. So it's a long day, but we'll be happy to help Harold, and I'll brief this to the police commission, and we'll take care of it. The one thing I do want to talk about, though, and what I would like to see from the Board of Selectmen, we have a serious concern about during the 4th of July parade, the parade only, we have a concern with the vehicles that are parked downtown on South and North Main Street from essentially the in on Main through Pickering Corner. What I would like to see, if you could entertain it, is a temporary ban from about 7:30 in the morning to about 1300 hours in the afternoon. No vehicles parked either side of the parade route. Down essentially the length from North Main Street to South Main Street to Pickering Corner for a variety of reasons. But what Harold is saying is true. The parade is large. The equipment that is moving in that parade is large. And the scores and scores of folks that are watching the parade, it gets jam-packed in there. And it's difficult for us to maintain control with the literally thousands of people that are on either side. And if we could get the cars out of there, have the no parking ban, that would facilitate both fire rescue, EMS, and police personnel being able to assist with the control of the parade and making sure that we have a wide enough space to get some of that heavy equipment through, which, as you know, includes half-tracks and tanks and armored personnel carriers and jeeps and you know, and big dump trucks like Joe Balboni down there with his big dump truck. And and of course the fire apparatus, which is very large. So if you could give me a temporary ban, I would love it, and I think it'll be much safer. Thank you.
I have a question. Dean, where are we going to ask those people to park? Are we going to set up a place where you would prefer them to go? I mean, I think there are an awful lot of people and a lot of cars that park in that area, and so, one, we're going to have to do a lot of PR. But we do that, too, a lot of signage, and then we probably should give them a suggestion where they should go.
So yes, that's a great idea and a great question. So we have the Oddfellows Hall that we could direct them to. We could direct them to Dockside, down, you know, that area if they want to park downtown. We can send them over to the Glenda Street lot. There's more than enough parking there to, I think, accommodate everybody that would normally be in that area. There's not a lot of traffic between, not a lot of parked cars between the Inn on Main and, say, the Wolfeboro Inn. Right. All right. So really, what we're dealing with, the heavily congested area, is really from about Sewell Road, the intersection of Sewell Road and North Main, and through Cape Park. So I think those areas has more than ample enough parking, and it would also facilitate getting people on their way faster. So after the parade, right, literally we have thousands of people moving back and forth. The road is shut down because you have all these scores of pedestrians, and the faster we get them off the road into their cars and heading out on the main arteries, the better. So this would actually probably work to their advantage. Sure, I get it. It's convenient. It's what they've always done. But I think this is a much safer way to go.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get the advance warning, you know,
We
that we need to do a lot of PR, because that's where I have sat there with my grandmother in that truck.
I think as long as we get it out on our social media platforms, and we get the Granite State News on board and WSR and some of the other local media outlets can assist us get the word out. We can get it on Wolfeboro Community TV, and I think people will be generally understanding. We're not asking, it's not terrible, all that inconvenient. It's, you know, for those folks that want to park, say, on South Main Street or North Main Street by the downtown, you simply go to Dockside. At that time of the day, the parking lot is going to be pretty empty. You go to Oddfellows Hall and/or just a 5-minute stroll down to Glen Street lot.
I would like to see you bring something in with a diagram of where you want that. I think we ought to have a public hearing on it, because there's going to be some pushback. So I think that it would make sense as soon as you can get us something.
Sure.
Maybe work with Harold or whatever to figure it out.
We
'Cause
can,
I don't want to give you that tonight.
if you'd
First
like to
time I heard
schedule,
about it, so.
if you'd like to schedule for the next meeting, I'll have you some paperwork tomorrow.
I think it's an idea worth discussing.
Yep.
I think it'd be nice to, and you know, we all go to the parade, and we all have our favorite place that we sit. My favorite place happens to be right across from the Wolfeboro Inn, because Wolfeboro Inn throws hot dogs.
Now I know.
Now you know. It might be helpful to just quantify how many cars we're talking about, how many parking spaces. I don't think there's a bunch. You know, it may be 2 handfuls. I do observe, and I think, you know, Chief, thanks for pointing it out. I mean, we got big equipment coming down there, and you got little kids. And there's also other, you know, there's other things I've seen in my life that with parked cars, you know, during these types of events. And I just think it would be smart for us to have a rational conversation that says 25 spaces, whatever the number is, are going to get moved, and we're going to provide temporary signage. And I agree with the chairman and Linda, we probably should get a public hearing, because there are going to be some people who are going to get, you know, a little wrapped around the proverbial axle, but
I'll have the information for you tomorrow. No issues there. It's very easy to get our hands on that. You're absolutely right. It's the line of sight issues. It's the not just the children, but it's the people, the adults walking in between those cars. It's difficult to see. It is difficult to see.
Thank you, Chief.
Get us the information, we'll set up a time.
Thank you.
Roger that. Thank you.
You want a motion on the?
Yes.
I'd like to move that we approve the temporary event permit for the Harriman Hale Post number 18 to hold the Independence Day Parade, the 100th anniversary of the Independence Day Parade,
Excuse me, and the rain date was the following day, the 5th.
on Thursday, July 4th, rain date July 5, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, Harold. On the slopes.
Okay, we're going to have a public hearing to accept unanticipated funds in excess of $10,000. This is Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. The Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. Acceptance of unanticipated funds in excess of $10,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-B3A, relative to an annual scholarship fund contribution for the Josiah Brown Trust in the amount of $20,000. Okay. Jim, do we have anything else?
Yeah, so we've received notification that the annual appropriation to the trust has come through, and basically this is the formality looking to accept said funds.
Okay. Anybody have any questions in reference to the fund? Close the public hearing. Anybody want to make a motion? I can move to accept the unanticipated funds in the amount of $20,000, accordance with RSA 31:95-B3A, relative to the annual scholarship fund contribution for the Josiah Brown Trust.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. another public hearing. Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019 at 6:30 in the Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, regarding amendments to the Town of Wolfeboro Beaches Ordinance related to Section 16-1 through 8. Materials related to this hearing are available on the Town of Wolfeboro website, or contact the planning office. Matt, are you going to?
Good evening, members of the board. Matt Sullivan, Director of Planning and Development. This is an ordinance we've reviewed, I think, 3 to 4 times over the past few meetings. But the proposed changes to Article 16, this is entitled the Beaches chapter of the town ordinance. We are making some amendments here to add some content, but really I think we're doing 3 things. We're adding a little more structure to the ordinance. We're also creating some reasonable and clear parking restrictions based on higher occupancy vehicles as well, and also adding some further definition to parking, and also making it clear that the existing beach rules that are in place at our 3 beaches that this focuses on are enforceable components of the ordinance, and as such they are not right now, and we're adding that element in. So those are really the 3 main items that we're adding to the ordinance, but as you'll see, we've now codified a total of 8 separate sections under Article 16, the beach ordinance. Be happy to answer any questions, but hopefully we've covered this quite exhaustively at the prior meetings.
Anybody have any questions or anything in reference to this?
So just for the benefit of those people who haven't been part of the exhaustive process, what's the problem we're solving here?
The principal problem that we're solving here is that there were concerns about the presence of, or the, I guess, overuse of the town beaches by higher occupancy vehicles. This is one approach, and I think the first toe in the water approach, if you will, to remedying that issue. Therefore, we've created some restrictions that, based on some specific Parks and Rec permission, we've restricted those higher occupancy vehicles from the beaches. But again, I think we're just providing some more structure to some rules that have existed on our beaches, but really were not necessarily enforceable in the sense of a town ordinance, and also providing our law enforcement professionals with some guidance as to what rules they should be enforcing.
So we tightened up the hours of operation at the beach. That was the second thing we did.
We did deal with that, yep.
Yeah.
And really we were remedying a discrepancy between what was listed in our marketing materials and what was listed in our ordinance. We had some discrepancy there, but I think we have a clear understanding now.
And to quantify what Matt said as well, I mean, this is part 1 of what is most likely going to be a multi-phase project to make the beaches safer and more accessible to community members going forward. We know that there are other issues that need to be resolved, but we're taking this one step at a time.
Okay. Any questions? I'll close the public hearing. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the amendments to the Town of Wolfeboro Beaches Ordinance related to Section 16-1 through 8 as presented at this meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next meeting, next public hearing. Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, regarding amendments Town of Wolfeboro bus ordinance related to Section 164-8, travel and parking restrictions for buses.
Another amendment that we've discussed a few times, but for members of the public who haven't heard about this yet, we did receive some interest in making a modification to Section 164-8, which is within the town's ordinance and deals specifically with travel and parking restrictions for buses, really in the downtown core. The proposed amendment is to Section B of this, which is titled Loading and Unloading. And the specific concern was that one historically used loading spot was not specifically identified within the list that we had there. That list actually only included the South Main Street location in front of Cape Park. Therefore, the recommendation was to include Railroad Avenue in front of the railroad station in a location you've probably traditionally seen buses parked in on the water side of the building. And as you've seen in your packets, I have sort of marked out what that location looks like after meeting on site with Mary DeVries. So the amendment really is to simply add in the following locations, both South Main Street in front of Cape Park and the Railroad Ave in front of the railroad station, as I just identified. So just adding in something that has historically been used, but we'd like to create a more legal or conforming way to deal with that.
Okay, is there any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Wood?
Matt, was there a conversation about putting some type of a sign for the buses that says, please consider powering down?
Yep, we did talk to, I talked to the administrative assistant in the Public Works Department about what signage was available. I would be uncomfortable saying that we've decided to have a no idling sign, though. I think that conversation is still open. I think we do have some flexibility after the ordinance is adopted, but I'd be happy to get some input on that. I know there was some interest at a prior discussion to have a sign that indicated that we prefer that folks have a no idling presence there.
You said you're uncomfortable. What is your uncomfort?
I wasn't speaking to my own comfort. I was saying that my understanding is that there was a mix of opinions on the board when we had discussed that item, so I wasn't comfortable moving forward with a no idling sign if there was not consensus.
I think we should see if we got a consensus of the board to have it, because I think we're looking at trying to look at our energy consumption, the air pollution, and this was one of the things I know Paul and I definitely wanted, and I thought we had all board members on board, so you want to verify that, Dave?
Is everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for, I mean,
We had talked about it.
We had,
Talked about, this is why we wanted to have the bus parking or just unloading and stuff on that side of the station as opposed to the other side, where if they were idling, they were going to be an issue to the owners of the property.
Okay, great.
and for, for folks, it may sound trivial, but, sitting there with a diesel or any engine just idling, it just throws stuff up in the air. And, I don't want to quantify how much stuff goes up, but if we can cut back on the particulates we're tossing up into the air, we should just consider doing that. And, hey, if the bus driver's coming in, they're going to offload people, it's going to be a 5-minute thing, and the air conditioning's on, we're not going to run out and throw a ticket at you, but if the bus is going to be there for any prolonged period of time, I think some kind of signage, just asking for the consideration of powering it down would be good.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, I think
Make
that's
a
great.
motion?
I'll make a motion that we put up no idling signs for buses in the locations where we are allowing them to park.
And also to approve the amendments that we've put in place.
I'll add that too.
I'll second that, too.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is a bulk vote. This is weekly manifests, current use applications, intent to cuts, yield tax warrants, property tax credits, and exemptions. Okay, next we're going to somebody want to move to approve the bulk vote?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Board appointments. First one is Wolfeboro Library Board of Trustees, Deborah Long Smith. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Deborah Long Smith to the Wolfeboro Library Board of Trustees until 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next one is Wolfeboro Economic Development Committee, member Alan Harding.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint Alan Harding as a member of the Economic Development Committee for a 3-year term expiring in March of 2022.
We have a second to that? I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is Agricultural Commission, Wendy Rogers.
I'll move to appoint Wendy Rogers as a member of the Wolfeboro Agricultural Committee for a 2-year term expiring in March 2021 and that we send a note to her requesting that she make sure she gets sworn in by the town clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A Energy Committee alternate member, Douglas Smith. I'll make a motion to appoint Douglas Smith as an alternate member to the Energy Committee
Second.
for a 3-year term. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Would you like me to handle the next one, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
you could do that.
Next one is for recommendation to appoint Dave Senecal to the ZBA. Recommend him to the ZBA. Do I have a motion?
I move to recommend appointing Mr. Dave Senecal as an alternate member of the Wolfeboro Board of Adjustment for a 3-year term expiring March of 2022.
I don't think we're appointing him, we're recommending him to the ZBA
I said recommending appointing.
for 1 year.
They would then pick that up and make the appointment.
It's a 1-year recommendation.
Yeah,
Make
we
sure we
can
get
make
that.
the appointment.
Would you adjust that
I'll
to,
adjust that to move to recommend for a
Right.
1-year appointment to the ZBA for Mr. Dave Senecal.
do I have a second on that?
We're recommending
Yep.
him to the ZBA.
Not
But
appointing.
We're not appointing.
Recommending, I was
We're
just,
having a hard time with this one, Paul, aren't we?
well, now you got me all hosed up, I don't know what I'm doing. We're recommending that Mr. Senecal be appointed as an alternate
Nope.
member.
Yep.
No appointing.
I'll let you do it. Linda, you do it.
I'll move to recommend to the Wolfeboro Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Second, oh, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Rules of procedure.
Opposed? One abstention?
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Town Manager hiring process update. Linda?
Okay. On May 15th, the Board of Selectmen and interview panelists went into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3 2B hiring. There were 3 interview panels that interviewed 5 semifinalist candidates. After the interview, each panel provided the board with their 2 top candidates and the reason why the candidates stood out. After the interview panelists left, the board agreed to a final interviews for the top 2 picks, and they were the same for both panels. One candidate could not make the May 15th interview, so the board scheduled an interview on Tuesday, May 21st, with most of the interview panelists present. Again, the board went into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3 2B hiring. After the review, the panelists provided the board with their thoughts on the candidates. The board agreed to do final interviews with the 3 top candidates. On May 21st, the Board of Selectmen, still in non-public session, conducted one of the final interviews. Tonight, prior to the board meeting in non-public session, the board conducted a second final interview and has the last final interview scheduled after this board meeting. When the board decides on which candidate it would like for the new town manager, the board will offer to the candidate a conditional offer of employment. The major terms of the conditional offer are successful negotiation of an employment agreement, a clean background check, and a medical clearance. If any of those conditions are not met, the offer will be rescinded, and that's where we are as of today.
Okay. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on our agenda is approval of a hawkers and peddlers license.
So I believe that this is simply a change of business associated with the loss of Dennis DeVilder, and the Branch and Bloom have been leased, and this is just simply a formality to transfer that hawkers and peddlers to that ownership.
Okay, they have a license, expires April 2020. So I don't see any issues there. Filled out our applications. I'll move to approve the Hawkers and Peddlers permit number 1903 for the 2019 season due to a change in ownership of DeVilder's Farm.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Approval for New Hampshire Department of Justice grant. Jim?
So this is a grant which the police department has received, and basically it's just authorizing me to be able to sign the grant so that they can continue some of their operations.
Okay, this is to move to authorize the town manager to sign a grant agreement with New Hampshire Department of Justice in the amount of $120,000. A second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Approval for the 2019 Forest Fire Warden, Deputy Warden, Issuing Agent reappointments. Jim, you want to?
Yeah, so every 3 years, we're required by the state of New Hampshire to reappoint forest fire warden, deputy warden, and issuing agents. The warden has traditionally been the fire chief, which makes a significant amount of sense based on them being able to manage the apparatus. The deputy wardens are basically the full-time staff, and we allow our administrative assistant at the fire department to be able to fill out permits, so she would be an issuing agent. This is done every 3 years, pretty standard reappointments.
Okay, would you mind reading the names so people know who
I can
they
read
are?
those, yeah. So currently, James Pinio, myself, Forest Fire Warden. Deputy wardens would be Frank Belfleur, Joel Dale, James Dearborn, Jr., Andre DeBeer, Mark Fullerton, Nathan Nichols, Timothy O'Keefe, Evan Turcott, Thomas Zoddy, and Tyler Valenti, who is our newest firefighter. And Kathy LaPierre would be an issuing agent.
I'll make that motion to approve that recommendation.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're having a discussion, I'm assuming it was with Mr. Ford, in reference to Wolfeboro Falls DOT proposal to eliminate crosswalk.
Hello, Dave Ford, Public Works. We are in the midst of New Hampshire DOT is doing upgrades for the town of Wolfeboro. And before we get into the specifics of the crosswalk, I would like to make an announcement, if that's okay, with regards to the schedule of downtown. I've issued a memo today to the chief and to the selectmen. If I could read it, I think it's good for the public. This is regarding New Hampshire DOT's schedule. DOT has notified my office of their work plan to pave Main Street. That'd be South and North Main Street. The contractor on this project is Pike Industries. And people might have seen they started to mobilize sign packages just today. The project limits are from Three Sisters Main Street driveway entrance to just below Forest Road, and from Pickering Corner to the Wright Museum, Center Street. So DOT will be overlaying the project that Brooks has been working on for a year and a half. Much of the work will be done at night between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in order to minimize disruption of traffic and business during the day. This is kind of it's been a nightmare doing construction, and paving is tough. Base courses are done, you have traffic going over it, but with a finished course, If the traffic is going off it when it's fresh and they're turning on it, it can make it a mess. Doing it at night with very little traffic will make a much better job, will be much faster. However, it does provide, and I am apologizing for the nighttime noise for residents who will hear this noise during those nights. But again, it's really going to benefit for a better project and less disruptions for businesses and traffic during the day. So the official schedule as of today, and again, as I noted at the bottom, the schedule is subject to change due to weather or mechanical problems. If one of the big pieces of equipment breaks down, or if the paving plant breaks down, then they'll have to adjust. And if they do adjust, I will update as soon as I find out. So the project and the signs that went up today, they started May 28th through June 7th. They will be rebuilding the tip downs at all crosswalks on South and North Main Street in accordance with ADA requirements. This work will occur during the day and crosswalks will be temporarily closed. So all our crosswalks where we have tip downs, they do not meet the ADA standards for slopes, and they do not meet the ADA requirements for persons with visual problems. So they have the dome, the steel domes, and if everyone has been down Center Street lately, we just installed a lot of those on Center Street with the Center Street contract.
Dave, will the contractor be doing this work, or is this something the town is going to be expected to do on the tip downs?
This is a subcontractor to Pike, which is Colby, will be doing the tip down work. Yep. And they also, they required us to adjust or repair the drainage structure. So over the last 3 weeks, the town has been responsible for repairing drainage structures that have been deteriorated due to salt, and so we've rebuilt all those. But DOT is now going to, part of this contract is to put liners in the catch basins. So after we've done our work to rebuild them, these liners will help mitigate the impact of the salt getting on that top of the structure. So there'll be work in the road also with regards to the drainage structure. So we put liners in the catch basins, and they'll be doing the tip down work. And again, when they do the tip down work, there'll be one day to rip out the concrete, form it, pour it, and then the next day it'll set up, and then the next day it'll be removed. So, and it'll jump from one to the other. So not every crosswalk will be eliminated all at once. It'll be every other one. They'll get fixed and they'll go back and do the others.
And how many will they do a day, do you think?
It's pretty amazing if you saw what they did on Center Street. So they did all the ones on Center Street in one day.
Okay. Like 6 of them, right? I think
Okay.
4 or 6 of them.
No, they're more than that. More than that. Yeah. So they can work fast,
Okay.
but it's going to be more complicated downtown. And the Pike Industries as a contractor will be responsible for kind of putting no parking in the areas that are going to work that day. So again, we apologize for that inconvenience, but again, hopefully everyone respects that so we can get this work done. Now, here's the interesting part. So starting on Sunday, June 9th, June 10th, June 11th, and possibly June 12th, there'll be grinding. So part of the project will be in the downtown area. We can no longer do overlays because there's no curb reveal. We only have 3 inches left. So, and the surface is really in tough shape. So we're going to grind out 2 inches, starting from Sewell Road all the way through Pickering Corner to the south exit of the Three Sisters. So when they grind out that's going to take some time. It's going to be relatively noisy. Those grindings will be taken off site, and we'll see, you know, for those days, we're going to have a line where you can see what's grinding, what's not grinding. So it's going to be rough downtown. There'll be structures will be exposed, so you can be very careful. Even now, we've raised structures in anticipation of paving, so be careful with those structures, and those could be a sewer manhole, a water gate valve, or a sewer cleanout, so be very careful about those. Then, on June 11th, on the third night, they're going to start paving, so they still might have a crew grinding in the downtown area, and then they're going to start the overlay. So on Center Street, from the Pickering Corner, out to the Wright Museum, we'll be doing a 1.5-inch overlay, and that'll be the main street, so that should be able to get done in one night, and that will complete that part of the project. G.W. Brooks has a subcontractor who will come in to tie in all the driveways and all the side roads, and to finish off the sidewalks. Again, we apologize for the sidewalks. We still have some gravel sections. We can see all the curb went in. It looks really nice, but the elevations still aren't there. Again, I do apologize. They really is not safe for wheelchairs yet, but when this is done, everything will be tied in. So after that paving on June 11th, G.W. Brooks comes in, and we're not sure about their schedule, to tie in the side roads and then finish all the sidewalks. Question?
No.
Nighttime paving, then following on June 12th and June 13th, they'll be doing the downtown area. If they can't get it all done due to conditions or whatever, that they will come back. They will not work on a Friday night or Saturday night, and they'll come back on the Sunday night, the 16th. They will also complete a shim overlay from Sewell Road out to where there's a pavement seam that's maybe 500 feet south of Forest Road. And they'll match that seam, and then that will complete that portion. So that's the construction as to date. We have this in a written format, so we're going to give this to the chamber so they can forward it to all the businesses. We're going to, I think Dean said you're going to post it on Facebook, and we'll get it posted on the town webpage. And again, that is subject to change depending on weather and, again, mechanical problems. So, any questions on that? This project also includes, they would continue to overlay going north on Route 28. And that is one of the reasons I'm here tonight, to explain what has happened with DOT with regards to our crosswalks in Wolfeboro Falls. As you may be aware, we have 3 crosswalks. We have the Bridge Falls Pathway, which is a major path that is on the old railroad train. And then we have one just a little south at the Wright Museum. And then we have one a little north from the Oddfellows parking lot going across to the Copy Center. DOT on February 12th, they issued a letter to myself. I received it on February 19th. And at that time, it was written by Bill Lambert, who is the State Traffic Engineer and Administrator. He's the Director of the Bureau of Traffic. So he is the main person responsible for all traffic in the state of New Hampshire. He's a very busy guy, and he's a really good gentleman, and I do respect him. Though we're going to find out that I don't agree with him with his decision with regards to Wolfeboro. And again, I have a lot of I'm going to try to summarize it, but if anyone is interested in the detail, we'll have all this available. So on the memo on February 12th, they point out that they're required by ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, to review all crosswalks to make sure that persons with disabilities can make these crosswalks. And this specifically is looking at people in wheelchairs or people who are visually impaired. So we're looking at those 2 things. So what's created this is the federal law that's supposed to help people with disabilities. And in that, they do a review of our crosswalks. And when they started to look at our crosswalks, then they want to pull in their state standards or their federal standards. And they reference those standards in here. I'm not going to bore you with the MUTCD, which is a federal guideline that covers all the roads in the country. And they tell motorists where they should expect to see pedestrians to, and that the crosswalks identify a safe place for pedestrians to cross. And they, based on their study, have said that neither of the crosswalks that are to the north and the south of the Bridge Falls meet those criteria, and it was not evident during their review that the volume of pedestrians crossing these specific locations would warrant installations of mid-block crosswalks. There, typically, as a rule of thumb, we typically justify installation of crosswalks when the number of pedestrian crossings are on the order of 20 per hour, which would be pretty high. And we believe these locations would fall short of this figure on a typical day. Well, I would say that on a typical day, probably not many of our crosswalks would go. They go on to indicate that we have high volume, 13,000 vehicles per day traveling on Route 28. And we all know that. We travel here. And so the logic goes on that this presents an increased potential for vehicles to either not yield to pedestrians or to be rear-ended by motorists who do not see that they are stopping. They go on to conclude that while we understand the elimination of mid-block crosswalks alone will not prevent pedestrians from crossing, they're acknowledging that people will still cross there, an improvement to safety is achieved by increasing pedestrian awareness when crossing, since they will need to wait for an appropriate gap instead of assuming they're seen. It is important to recognize that crosswalks do not provide safety from moving vehicles. I almost fell off my chair when I read that. And I should qualify this. While I'm a civil engineer, I'm a professional engineer, my area of expertise does not go into traffic. But so I'm going to be more like the layperson here. How does that make any sense? Yet, so I was stunned when I saw it, and I responded as quickly as I could on February 20th. So I had received it on the 19th, and I responded, and I said, geez, I'm receiving your letter, and I showed him the crosswalks on a map, and I showed him the Oddfellows parking lot. I showed him the parking lot that we have for the copy center on that side, the Bridge Falls. We have obviously the Wright Museum. We have a lot of pedestrian activity in the area trying to indicate that, geez, we really have a lot of pedestrian here, and we really are a community that is used to stopping for crosswalks. We're going to tip. Oh, God, sorry. I've been out in the woods today, so
That's okay. We're used to ticks.
Has he been crying up and down my back?
That's a big piece of value add right there.
I make the point that the town of Wolfeboro is trying to make town more pedestrian-friendly and walkable. And again, I would point this out too, for some of the businesses on Center Street were complaining about the amount of curb we have and where the curb is. And I think it is unfortunate for drivers who tend to get used to the way it used to be, where we have to have wide open car. Our intent was to make this more pedestrian-friendly. We want to have people go slow. We want people that they can walk downtown and be able to cross from the Clark Plaza to the Harvest Market and wherever they want to go without having to worry about being run over. So I make the point, I do not believe your analysis is taking into consideration anything but vehicles. We need to slow vehicles down. And I've been trying like heck to get, what can we do to slow traffic down? And the response when I talked about South Main Street is, well, you need to do a detailed traffic study before we can consider that. Well, you know, we haven't appropriated the money for a traffic study, and it's kind of, they throw that back on the face, but when we weren't looking, they went and did a study to determine that our two crosswalks weren't safe. I asked them to look about context-sensitive solutions, which is something that, as an engineer, about 12 years ago when I came here, I went to their classes and said, wow, this is a good idea. We can't use the same solution for every problem. Just like we've discussed rural roads. We can't apply the same standard that we're going to use for North Line Road, maybe to Stoddard Road. You know, there's different roads and you gotta have different standards. So we have been encouraged to reach out. What is the problem? You know, what are we trying to solve? Where's our future vision? How do we make sure that our solving the problem meets our future vision? And that's context-sensitive solutions. And in my email to Bill Lambert, I said, geez, where was your context-sensitive solutions? And then I pointed out, I said, geez, how do you say it's less safe taking the crosswalks out? My logic would indicate the state law requires motor vehicles to have to stop for pedestrians at crosswalks. Now, I haven't been to driving school in over 40 years, but I'm assuming that law hasn't changed. How can you say crosswalks do not provide safety? It does not provide safety from drivers that do not follow the laws. That's not a good idea to eliminate crosswalks. We need to place signs in better locations to notify motorists that the responsibility is not to run over pedestrians in crosswalks. It sounds funny, but it's not. That's what it is. You see a crosswalk, you should automatically slow down. And I would think the majority of people at Wolfeboro are used to that. And I got to tell you, when I came up here in 1986, two little kids. The first time I stopped off, I came from Boston, Massachusetts. I stopped off the cross, it wasn't a crosswalk, but I stopped. All of a sudden, the traffic all stopped for me. It was 1986. I was stunned. What are you doing? They look at me. You fool, you're in a crosswalk. You get to cross. Wolfeboro is different than Boston and down in Florida, Massachusetts. I can tell you that from 86. I think it's still different now, except for the license plates that don't say live free or die. Reducing crosswalks, I think, does the opposite. We need to slow traffic down to Wolfeboro core, and I ask them to please help. I hope you plan on holding a public hearing with the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen, notifying the businesses in this area before any decisions are made. As we know, we pay a lot of attention to our businesses downtown. We are now trying to make sure Center Street and Wolfeboro Falls, and now even Bay Street, get that same attention. I see a vision in which this business district includes that whole area. And the traffic we have here would be, everyone's just going to slow down. It doesn't take you that much longer. You may rush here, but then you're going to get stopped there. If everyone slowed down, we'd be okay. And I think the crosswalks help. So that email went out, and Mr. Lambert came back to me. Well, I should say first, the Ron Brandmason sent an email to me saying, okay, we made a decision, we're eliminating your crosswalks, and we want you to sign off on it. Oh, I can't do that. And I went, wait, what happened to a public meeting? And then they were requiring us to put in either a rapid flashing beacon or a hybrid beacon at these mid-block crossings. And as we're aware, we have our first one that's still not activated yet, because until we can get the markings in, we can't activate it. You'll see them between the Clock Plaza and Wolfeboro Harvest Market. That will be a push button that will flash and notify motorists so that you'll have a crossing there. That cost us, or the state and us, because we share the cost of that, over $40,000. That's a price that was bid out 2 years ago. That would cost more than $50,000 now, and this hybrid beacon I think would even be more because it'll have a mast on. These crosswalks also come with additional lights to make sure that the road is lit in accordance with the federal standards. So again, I asked if we could discuss this, and I asked if he had any options. Bill Lambert came back to me on May 8th and indicating that sorry for the delay, and then he provided a 6-page letter documenting why they thought they were correct. And again, without trying to read it all, he was indicating that the studies would indicate that as many people die in crosswalks as die outside of crosswalks. And somehow the logic was that, again, crosswalks do not slow traffic down, crosswalks do not protect pedestrians. And again, I'm still lost to that logic because in Wolfeboro, I think the opposite is true. They go on to reference standards from the Federal Highway, City of Sacramento, California, Boulder, Colorado, and North Carolina. Now, my daughter lives out in North Carolina, and
Nice place.
it's beautiful, but it's nothing like Wolfeboro. And again, Colorado or California are bad examples to use to compare to Wolfeboro. Again, back to where is the context-sensitive solutions? He went on again to defend what they want to do, which is to eliminate the 2 crosswalks. And again, in their study, they didn't give us their study, but they again indicate when warning signs are installed in locations where it's rare for a motorist to be seen by a pedestrian, it can lead drivers to ignore or otherwise disrespect not only that particular location, but other locations in towns and regions where signs of crosswalks are truly needed and appropriate. So, again, by this criteria, eliminating these 2, the same criteria would apply to South Main Street. They are now preparing the bid documents, so next year we're going to be overlaying from Pickering Corner out to the Alton Town line. We have 4 crosswalks that would be in the same position. Brewster and Missions, Green Street, the library, and the high school. So there potentially could be elimination of those 4 crosswalks, or that the town would have to come up with potentially $50,000 plus for each of those intersections to put in flashing beacons. They determine if 1 flashing beacon is good, then they all would require flashing beacons. And again, based on our meetings we've had on Route 28 and the desire for the steering committee and what we see from the master plan to try to maintain our character, it just seems like the DOT is trying to take us in a different direction. Again, he really goes on to defend his position, and I think if I was in a court of law, he would win, I would lose. But the reality is, I think we as a town need to continue to fight for these crosswalks Again, they're trying to indicate that the speed limit, while it's 30 miles an hour, they accept that people go 40 miles an hour. And that somehow taking out the crosswalk the people now are supposed to wait for these gaps. So now instead of forewarning a driver that there's a crosswalk ahead, the crosswalk sign comes out, and the person who puts across that street, which is again almost 60 feet, is supposed to wait till there's a gap in time. We all know what's going to happen.
How many cars a day goes down Route 28?
12,000. So what will happen is most of the people, myself, most of the people in this room, will see someone coming. It could be an elderly person or it could be someone in a wheelchair, and they will stop. And what will happen then? What happens at the biggest place we have accidents are the golf course. There's no warning there. There's only one little sign, and many people stop, and then the motorists behind are not anticipating a stop. What are you stopping for? There's no crosswalk. But boom, we have more rear-end accidents there than any place in town. My fear is, if this goes through, that we will have more of those rear-end accidents because most of the people will stop. They go on to talk about walkability and trying to put the burden back on the town to come up with ideas to improve our crosswalks. Some of those we've heard before, and some of those we should consider, which is eliminating parking next to crosswalks. We did that near Carpenter School. That's worked out pretty well. Downtown, where traffic is so slow, it's still a little tricky because sometimes people pop out. Something we might want to consider, maybe eliminating some of those parking now that we have some additional parking, but we know, parking is tough to minimize. They talk about build bulbs so that people get out a little further. So those are things we could consider in our master plan, and when we really do a major project downtown of trying to make it a little better. Now, the public outreach. And I'll just read this paragraph as short. The scope and timing of the resurfacing project does not allow the level of public outreach you suggest. The U.S. Department of Justice decision regarding complying with ADA has prompted our ongoing evaluation of mid-block crossings within resurfacing projects throughout the state. As part of this evaluation, we have to make difficult choices in the interests of improving pedestrian safety and mobility on the best available data. Again, they're blaming a law that's supposed to help people with disabilities for eliminating crosswalks that will not help people with disabilities. They're going to have to now walk quite a bit distance and go around, and then again, as I'm getting older, I don't like walking that extra distance. I can't imagine, when so it just doesn't make logic. So I went back with an email and indicated that I could not sign. I said, I'm sorry, that, we just don't agree on this. And that the indication was I wanted to bring it to the Selectmen tonight. I thought it would be important to notify businesses so that we could respond, and hopefully we can change their mind. Now, I've been doing a lot of talking, I apologize, but hopefully it's explainable to the board here and for people listening. This is a pretty important issue for us in going forward. And again, if I could answer any questions or any discussion.
Yeah, I did, after receiving your material, send it on to our 3 representatives. And what I said to them is that, to me, the town of Wolfeboro spent $99,000 to come up with 3 designs for Route 28, and it was the contact solution. And we've used that many places, being very successful, in order for us to give positive feedback for the state and to work with them. And so I asked the representatives whether they wouldn't support us not eliminating those. And I heard back from John McDonald, and he said he and Jeb Bradley would write a letter. I haven't heard anything from Edie Damaris or whether she's going to sign it, but I think we have to keep on pushing it, and I think we have to push at the state level with our representatives. It starts here, and it's going to go all throughout, and there is a charm and character of who we are, and we spent a lot of time talking about that with the Route 28, and particularly with Pickering Corner, and I think it's important for us to stand up and fight.
Would the board vote to make that point? Because I wrote the letter on behalf of the town. I'm assuming everyone agreed, but maybe it would be good that the board also agreed that not to eliminate those crosswalks and do whatever we can to have that happen. And then maybe we could write a letter on behalf of the selectmen to get that out to them also, to add to that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support it.
And also, I don't know if there's anyone else who wanted to speak to that issue.
Yeah, just a minute, let's get this
Yeah, I'm sorry.
off the table. Okay, all those in favor of probably having Jim put a letter together that we can sign?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, David.
I second.
Julie, did you want
Isn't that nice? Let the record show that Julie just gave back a tick.
Saving him for
Saved his tick. Dave is running into the bathroom to flush it.
This guy's gonna go for a swim.
So about these crosswalks, I've been at the crosswalk at the path for 22 years now. So I get to see all of it. The thing that Dave didn't mention, and it wasn't in the letters either, is that path is the snowmobile trail in the winter. It's not a crosswalk. It's a snowmobile crossing. Nobody does cross there in the winter because it's really not plowed at either end. So you can't get there around it. So it doesn't seem to make much sense to make that the flashing lights and everything and have the snowmobiles turn it on and off. The other thing is the crosswalk near Linda's could be moved easily towards 109A to make that one a little bit safer. Where it is right now is right within 2 turning spaces. That's the one that has the most people get injured at. That's just a note. But it doesn't make any sense to me to take the crosswalk out this near the public parking. You really want people to use that. Right now, you've got a yoga class going on. They're all parked at the Oddfellows for the public parking, and they cross the street on the crosswalk. If you take that crosswalk out, they're just going to jaywalk. That's what's going to happen. People do go too fast through there constantly. Dean will say something that I've called in before, that people just go way too fast through there. If we could slow them down a little farther up by maybe the church, by painting something in the street, that would help a lot. But taking out the crosswalk, I don't think is going to make any difference of how people drive through there. It's just going to be harder for pedestrians to make it safely from one side to the other. And it's also going to really cut back on some businesses. As it is right now, you can park on either side of the street to get to the Chinese restaurant for lunch. But if you take out the crosswalks, people are going to drive by, as they won't be able to get out and get across. They're just going to go on by. Same thing with MySpace. Same thing with the hairdresser. They're going to lose business because people can't get from one side of the street to the other.
Thank you.
I think, can I just say that I think she made a good point. I'd almost like to think we could add in about the fact that that's a winter snowmobile trail, so it's really not accessible as a crosswalk. Or, was it this year, 6 months? It was a long winter, so that's a great point, so.
My name's Mike Culver, and I work at the Wright Museum, and I'd like to speak against consolidating crosswalks for a lot of the reasons that Julie just talked about. But also, I think the state doesn't realize maybe that we're a resort community and that maybe we have more than 20 people walk through those crosswalks on some days during certain parts of the year. I'm going to make a very selfish appeal to you because of the Wright Museum. We have two special days during the year, in July and one in August. July is Family Day, and August is a car show. And on those 2 days, we have between 400 and 600 people come to those two events. And because of those events are happening out in our parking lot, we don't allow parking. So we hand out forms which show the town parking lots, and people park there and then they walk in. And those crosswalks are very, very important on those 2 days in particular, when you have between 400 and 600 people using those crosswalks. And so I think, as Mr. Ford said, I think it's silly to reduce the number of crosswalks when there are days in which those are really, really useful. And so that's my part. But you guys have already sort of said that you back that idea, but that may be another way in which you can talk about that when you talk about how to
I would certainly suggest that maybe you get in touch with David and get the address of DOT and who to send it to. And send something on your letterhead to them as well.
Sure, that'd
Saying what you just said to us.
be glad to do.
It can't hurt.
Cannot hurt.
Be glad to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, next thing on our agenda was North Wolfeboro Road increased pave width. I heard from Mark Diamond, and they canceled their appointment for tonight.
Thank you, Michael.
Now we're on to...
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, so we're in agreement still that the pavement width of North Wolfeboro Road is going to remain 19 feet.
19 feet.
We are not going to address that topic at all.
That was his indication to me.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, now we're on to other business. Anybody have any other business? Committee reports. Paul?
Okay. So we've had a couple of sessions to talk about net metering. The Energy Committee's been bringing in some folks that have some experience in that. We had one the other day. I thought it was actually pretty good. Good conversation around that. We've continued to interview town manager candidates. I've been a part of that, and we also had some other interviews to deal with. I've attended a police commission meeting with our chief and with that team. You know, one of my favorite topics is we reached out to some of the carriers, the telecom carriers, and the other day we had a very nice visit from a person from Consolidated, which is the old New England Telephone Company. They're actually pretty interested in showing us what they can do for us, which I think is pretty nice. And we're about to have a conversation with our friends at Verizon. We still haven't heard from AT&T, but I'm sure that our ask is going to find its way around. And that's about it. Oh, I did go to a member mingle the other night. It was fun. That was a good thing to do. That's it.
Okay, I didn't have any meetings other than the town manager interviews, which have been ongoing and been pretty intensive lately. Brad?
Yeah, same with me. We've had a lot of meetings with the town manager interviews. The only other outside meeting I've had is the Friends of Libby Museum. We met a week ago. And we also met, I think Jim's going to talk about it in his report. He'll brief us a little bit on the interviews we just did for the feasibility study for the Libby Museum. That's about it for me.
Yeah, I went to Perform It, which was the theater up here from the homeschool kids, and it was very good. And Dave, you joined me at the Water Summit, and there were about 150 people there. We learned a lot about cyanobacteria from the University of New Hampshire professor Jim Haney. I found it very interesting, and was very pleased that we had 150 people there to learn about water quality. I've been to the same 3 Energy Committee meetings with Paul. They have been very productive, and I have really enjoyed learning all that I have from the Dartmouth College students, from clean energy, just from the other members of that committee and their knowledge, and that is a real resource for the town. I went to the Chamber Executive Board meeting and went to the same social with Paul. The EDC met and was reviewing the master plan chapter on economic development. And we also had a conversation about scenic byways. And there's a new byway that would like to come from, and does it start at Wakefield, Jim?
It actually would start at the Brookfield-Wolfeboro town line and into Wolfeboro, because we aren't able to do it in Brookfield.
Okay.
The intent would be to try and tie a couple of those byways together.
Comes down 109, goes up 28, and meets up with the Lakes Region Byway at Pickering Corner. I wasn't quite sure where it'd start. The Special Event Committee met today. We're going to start planning for Wolfeboro 2019. Cyanobacteria, I went to the full committee meeting, but I've met 2 times with the assessing subcommittee, and we're developing a cyanobacteria identification and communication protocol. We're going to bring that to the full cyanobacteria committee on June 3rd, and hopefully to the Board of Selectmen on June 19th. And that's all I have.
Town managers report.
Yeah. Attended a couple of those similar meetings, the Economic Development Committee the other day, Energy Conservation Commission earlier last week. As Mr. Harriman had mentioned, we met with 2 different architectural firms regarding the Libby Museum. We unanimously chose Alba Architects, Limited Liability Partnership out of North Woodstock, New Hampshire. They will be providing us with a scope of services and moving forward. You can expect at the next Board of Selectmen's meeting for Alana Albee, the director of the Libby, to be present to speak with you on behalf of the Libby and researching and applying for LCHIP grant in conjunction with the Bieber Foundation to try and streamline some of these costs and develop a plan going forward. The thought process is to hope and have this contained and have a decision from a committee standpoint to come to the Board of Selectmen, the budget process, and the town meeting for 2020. The application for that LCHIP grant is due on June 28th, so it's a very tight window. Alana is already working on a lot of the paperwork, but what she really needs is the Board of Selectmen to endorse her to go forward and go for this grant. So she'll be here to speak to that. I had the opportunity to go down there. Alana walked me through the facility and around the facility today. I would encourage people who are interested in that facility to go down and see Alana and have her take you through the building to see what some of the problems associated with that facility are. So that was very productive. A reminder, I think you all recall that tomorrow, 10 a.m., is the tour of the RIB site with Mr. Ford, DES, and the Tufton Borough Board of Selectmen. I also received a notification that from this week that Daughters of the American Legion and the Boy Scouts of America will be selling American flags and water during the parade. Basically, this is something that they have done right along. We just wanted to notify the board that that's happening, and it's exclusively for during the parade, and they will be walking the parade route as nonprofits. To dovetail on what Mr. Ford was talking a little bit about, with the repaving of some of these roadways, they will be, New Hampshire DOT will be holding a meeting Wednesday, May 29th at 6 p.m. at the Prospect Mountain High School in Alton. I plan on attending that meeting. It's regards to the rumble strips, reinstalling the rumble strips after the paving. This is your opportunity to discuss that. Where they will specifically be talking that affects the town of Wolfeboro, from the Alton town line to the Wolfeboro town line. They will be talking from just south of Willow Street on Center Street, northerly to Route 109, and New Hampshire Route 109 northerly to the Wolfeboro-Ossipee town line. So if people have comments, concerns, questions with regards to that meeting and the rumble strips being reinstalled, we highly recommend you attend that meeting and let your opinion be known. It is also, that the notification of that meeting is also up on the town website for people to see, and that's pretty much what I have.
What time did you say that was? Was it 6?
It would be at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 29th, at the Prospect Mountain High School Auditorium.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any questions from the press. Public input? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Joe Haas is my name, H-A-A-S, from Gilmanton. And I saw your administrative assistant woman during the week, and she said that I could talk during public input rather than be put on the agenda.
That's fine.
And so I heard that earlier that the two representatives and one senator, actually, but the woman that is your state rep, she was here May 8th, and I was here too on the Tobin-Valinsky information session. I didn't know if any of you were here that night. Oh, you were? Okay, thank you. And you too. That's good. Because I also saw two selectmen from Effingham, and they were here also. And I went up to see them. And the reason I'm going around to these towns is I was trying to get some town to put an information letter into the May tax bills. And I don't know if the May tax bills have already been sent out, or have they not?
I don't think they have.
No, we have a June tax bill.
Oh, June 10th?
Our tax bill comes out in June, and it's due to be paid in July, the beginning of July, is my recollection.
Okay, thank you, because let me tell you what happened was last fall I tried to do this for the November tax bills, and I also own some property in Bosquen, so I went over to Salisbury, and the chief selectman there instructed the town administrator to please contact the New Hampshire Municipal Association to try to get a template that they could use, that they could share with other selectmen throughout the state. But that never happened. There was some miscommunication. But I thought if you could do that, that would be nice, to put something in based on what you learned at the information session. And what the wording I would say is like you would, not just that the people are entitled to an abatement after the fact, but you would seriously look into granting an abatement based on what Phil McLaughlin, or Peter Laughlin, he wrote the book on municipal law. He said there's actually 3 reasons for an abatement granting. One is overappraised value, the other is inability to pay, meaning poverty, and there's a third one that nobody's ever done, I don't think, not that I know, and that's illegality. And so when you're looking at the statute, RSA 80:4, it says the tax collector is to issue tax bills. And one of my friends who's a state rep, Dick Marple, I don't know if you know him or not, from Hooksett, he said, look up the word bill in the dictionary. A bill is a written invoice or statement for goods or services received. And if you don't have any child or children in the school system, you shouldn't be even getting that bill. But even if you did, that expense is supposed to be paid for by the state. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was, since then, well, let me back up. The suggestion, remember he made a suggestion that he said local people should get together and have a meeting on this with what they learned? And I'm thinking that this would be the place to do it. That you would, well, let me back up too. I talked to, what's her name? Ann Stelmach. She's the clerk of the Board of Tax and Land Appeals. She said the Board of Selectmen do have the power within 30 days of them getting the tax rate to put an appeal in to the board for $65 filing fee. And I'm willing to donate that, or I was thinking of matching funds. I mean, I hate to be just a neighbor, down the road, whereas somebody in town really should be making this suggestion, is to, once you get the tax rate, if it's anything other than 0, you should send it back, appeal it. Because there's the Londonderry case of 2006. He didn't put it up on the screen like he did down in Derry. I sent the link to you, I think, by email on the Derry one. And he did cite the Londonderry case of 2006. That's like the chapter of the Claremont case. That goes back to the original case. And in there, Judge Hicks says, once the adequacy amount has been determined, there's supposed to be no more local tax for education. And that has been set at 36.06, almost $4,000. And there's 3 bills. Unfortunately, they're all tabled, they call them retained, in the House, 2 in the House Finance, 1 in the House Education. And they wanted to go up on the adequacy amount to almost $10,000, $9,929 to be exact. And I said, well, why don't they do that? And then, but then they say, well, where's the money going to come from? And if everybody doesn't pay any tax locally, that's residents and business, the most obvious thing is you go up on the business tax, RSA 77-A:2. But you don't go up as high as what they were paying in property tax to give them a break too. So then all the towns and cities that have all these businesses, like Newington, remember, he was talking about that money would go into the state and would come down to the other states, the other towns that really need it. So the bottom line, I guess, would be if you could come up with a policy statement saying, yes, that you know, 2 of you maybe talk to the other 3, and say that you think that's the thing to do. That once the tax rate comes in, I think it's in the fall, usually, that is your plan of action. That would be like a statement. That would be nice.
Okay, we'll look into that. See what we can come up with.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm, like I said, I'm from Gilmanton, and I talk to the selectmen over there, but they only meet twice a month. I think you meet twice a month too, right?
Yes.
Right.
And usually one guy's sick, you know, they only have 2, so they can't really talk. And I said, well, let's have a work session. They said, well, go to some other town and get them, and then ricochet it back over here.
Yep.
I mean, sorry to bother you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else for public input? Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we re-enter into non-public session.
Second?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay.
I am too.
So there's the manifest. Yeah.
Okay, you can leave.
Give it. Jesus, don't leave it with him. We'll never get that. Huh?
I can, his email